Consider this story of Sean Swarner. At the age of 13, he contracted Hodgkin's disease. This is a kind of lymphatic sarcoma, cancer. But despite all odds, he survived. And then at the age of 16, he contracted another cancer called Atkins disease. Now that impacted him so severely that for 1 year he was in induced coma to enable his survival out of it. But he did survive. Now this happened when he was 16 years old. The doctor said his chances of going through both of these and still living was like a person winning 4 successive lotteries on the same ticket number. Nevertheless, it had come to this point that his parents gave him up for dead. They called the pastor who said his last rites, assuming that he was going to die in 15 days. However, lying down in bed, he was watching TV and he saw the World Iron Man competition. And he said, is it possible for me to participate in that Iron Man competition? He believed he could. He came across a statement that without food, human beings can live for 30 days max, roughly. Without water, for 3 days. Without hope, they can't live for more than 30 seconds. So he said, let me hope. Let me have faith. The first task before him was to cover the distance of 8 feet from the bed to the washroom. But he managed to do it. Now, when he did survive, one of his lungs was permanently damaged. He had only one lung. Nevertheless, he decided that he will climb the peaks. So he managed to climb various peaks in the United States. And then he trekked to the North Pole. And then he skied to the South Pole, which is 100 times more difficult than the North Pole. And finally, he stood on the granddaddy of them all, Mount Everest, 29,030 feet. So he was the first cancer survivor to be up there. But then, the World Iron Man competition still had his fancy. And finally, he qualified and participated for this as well. Now imagine a person who went through so much and yet survived and achieved so much. What was the one thing that propelled him? It was his enthusiasm, motivation, which is literally the motive for action. That is the fuel in your life. Enthusiasm is what makes all the difference in the tiniest of activities. When you are enthusiastic, it adds the extra edge to anything you do. Without enthusiasm, even the finest of works becomes drudgery and boredom. I was once in the passenger seat of a car and we went through a toll booth. The toll booth operator had his music blaring and he was dancing. So I said, "What's the party, bro?" he said, I love to dance, and this is my display box. I'm helping people get through and enjoying the process. Now compare that with the mindset of so many toll booth operators who see their box as a standing living coffin where they have to do this. In contrast is this person, he has just changed the have to into get to. I get to do this. And he has transformed his work into dance. And the one ingredient essential for that flip is enthusiasm. If you are enthusiastic, the name of God is sufficient divinity for you to unite with Him. Without enthusiasm, a big temple, all the sadhanas that Guruji says, all the jnana will still fall flat. So the one thing that is really essential to it is your enthusiasm. From it comes motivation, which is literally motive for action. When you are motivated, anything is possible. And without motivation, the tiniest of things becomes a huge obstacle. That is why the Scottish scientist Edward Appleton, whose scientific discoveries led to the worldwide transmission of radio waves, when he was asked the secret of his success, he said, enthusiasm, I rate it above and beyond professional skills. Now, anybody who has delved into scientific research knows the kind of obstacles that you encounter. And those who are enthusiastic, they cut through obstacles like a knife cuts through butter. And without this one quality, the tiniest of obstacles becomes huge. I often ask people that you were coming to the satsang, why did you stop? They say, Swamiji, it is so difficult. What is the difficulty in coming and sitting and doing kirtan? You know, when I used to sit with my kirtan book, my neighbor used to peer into my book. So it caused an emotional disturbance and I can't tolerate it. Now little difficulty became a huge mountain. On the other hand, a motivated person will say, no matter what the difficulty, I will go beyond it. This is the reason why somebody said, you may lose everything in your life but your enthusiasm, and you will gain it all back. But that person who has lost their enthusiasm is the one who is truly bankrupt. So, this fine quality of enthusiasm, many people, their work suffers from lack of it. That is why you find a listless, lackadaisical attitude, slipshod, chalta hai. You know, sometimes this is a disease. Chalta hai. Dude, chalta hai. So, you know, This is an insult to God Himself. Because He is the one who has blessed you with qualities and talents. And your commitment, your offering to Him should be, let me give the best of what I have in His service, in whatever I do. That is why the saying that if anything is worth doing at all, it is worth doing well. That is the way God wants you to work. The Bhagavad Gita says, Yogaha karma sukaushalam. What is yoga? It is skillfulness at your work. When you see it as an offering to God, you will give it your very best. So, Voltaire, the avant-garde poet and writer of France in the 18th century, he said some people, they only keep simmering all their life. They never come to a boil. What he meant was that some people never give their best to life. Their mindset is chalta. So, in contrast, was the bard of democracy, the poet of democracy in America, Walt Whitman. He is considered the bard of democracy, and he wrote some of the finest poetry. He said, I was simmering, and Emerson brought me to a boil. So the idea of life is to bring yourself to a boil. See, we take the name of God. Now, how do you take the name of God? You can take it, Radhe Radhe Govinda. Or you can say, oh my God, Radha Krishna are sitting in the name. Or you take it the way Shankarji takes it. He says, Rakaradini namani shrinvato mam Parvati. Oh Parvati, when I hear somebody say Ra, I become euphoric. This person is going to complete by saying Ma. That person may complete it by saying one, Ra one. But I go into ecstasy just hearing Ra. That is the enthusiasm with which Mahadev approaches the chanting of the name. What made all the difference? The quality of enthusiasm. That is why this word enthusiasm, if you go in the etymology, it's constructed from the Greek word theos, which means God, and entheos, meaning filled with the fervor of God. So that filling with the fervor of God will add the extra mile to your effort and prevent you from giving up when you are so close to success. One writer called R.U. Darby has written a book 3 feet from the gold. He was living in New Hampshire and went to the west. There he discovered a boulder with a gold vein in it. So when there is gold, it's called a gold vein. He said, yippee. Now, the early people who would go to the west, they would discover this gold, etc. So he discovered a gold vein there, and he went and purchased some very expensive mining equipment. But he got out just a little bit of the gold and discovered that it had finished. After that was only the rock. And he was straddled with this $10,000 mining equipment. So he sold it to a junk seller, buyer. That person was smart. He went and contacted a mining engineer who studied the situation and said, look, the gold vein has dried up out here, but you dig a few feet and you'll discover that it is continuing later on. So he then went on to dig through the rock, and sure enough, 3 feet later, the gold vein was continuing, and he struck so much of gold, it became one of the most lucrative mines in Western America. So the person who lost out on it because he gave up too early, R.U. Darby, wrote his memoirs in the book 3 feet from the gold. So whether it is spiritual success, whether it is quality work in any aspect of your life, enthusiasm makes all the difference. The same applies to spiritual sadhana. Krishna Paramahansa gave the example. In his days, there were no tractors, bulls were used for farming. So in the cow mela, some farmers would come to sell the bulls who would be sitting around. Other farmers would come to purchase them. Now, when you have a few score bulls sitting around, how do you find out which of these bulls is going to do hardy work? So, Ramakrishna Paramahansa explained that the farmer goes and kicks the bull from the backside. If the bull keeps sitting, the farmer decides that this bull will never amount to anything. If the bull gets up, the farmer says, this bull possesses enthusiasm. I can expect it to do some solid contributive work. So Maharshi Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras has explained there are 3 kinds of sadhaks. Mridu madhyadi vatratva tatopi visheshaha. There are those who have very little enthusiasm. The consequence, their bhakti is slipshod. Their seva is chalta hai. And little defects become game breakers for them. Whereas there are others who have madhya, medium level enthusiasm. They will strive hard. But when they hit a roadblock, they'll say, I did not come to bhakti to hit roadblocks. And then Visheshaha. Visheshaha are those who are filled with enthusiasm, the grace of God. And that is why they believe that they need to keep on going, give everything they are doing their very best, and carry on no matter what the difficulty. And these people may break 100 times, but they will join back again. These people may encounter difficulties, but they will go beyond that again. And that is why enthusiasm, inspiration is one crowning virtue for a fulfilling life. That is why somebody said, don't count your life in the number of breaths you breathed. Count your life in the number of moments that took your breath away. That is the kind of life we should all aspire for.